let's bring in Todd McShay, our good friend. He joins us now on the show. Todd, how you doing? Michael here.
Good, Michael. How you doing, bud?
We're doing all right. So, top 3 picks, who do you have, and do you think it's still fluid?
I think the biggest thing is with the potential for trade. Maybe it's just the extra couple of weeks that we have, just more speculation. But we're hearing a lot of noise about teams wanting to move back, teams wanting to move up, and we'll see if it all comes to fruition. But I think it's pretty set. I mean, I'm never 100%, but I would say in the high 90s that the first pick will be Jadeveon Clowney, the South Carolina defensive end. If Houston's there, then it'll be Houston, or if a team moves up, it will be to move up for Houston. But let's say the Texans take Clowney at 1. Then I think it's a coin flip between Greg Robinson, the offensive tackle from Auburn, at 2, or Sammy Watkins, the wide receiver. And if it's Robinson, then I think Watkins, the receiver, goes number 3 to Jacksonville. If it's Watkins goes number 2, then it's probably Khalil Mack, the outside linebacker from Buffalo, that goes. So it's most likely it's going to be Clowney, and then you're talking about the other 3 elite players in this draft: Robinson, Watkins, and Mack. In some order of those next 2 picks.
Well, let me get to you about Clowney. I mean, we've heard the criticism about his motor. Does he have the desire to be great? I mean, are any of those negatives legitimate?
They're legitimate in that, when you study his tape from last year, the effort was not as ferocious as what you saw the year before. And there were certainly times where he, when plays away from him, he didn't give the effort that you'd love to see. But I also think it was way overblown. And anyone who studies the actual coach copy tape, where you're watching basically close-ups of these guys in the tight copy, every single play, you get used to watching defensive linemen. They save themselves, especially early in the season in games where it's 100% humidity and 95 degrees, like that North Carolina game. And I actually thought Clowney kind of played so hard early on that he got gassed. But it's the first time I can remember where an ISO camera was on a defensive lineman for an entire game and for an entire season. So I think it got overblown to a certain extent. Their NFL teams certainly have questioned his motivation, questioned his true passion for the game. And listen, if he plays 2 out of every 3 plays as hard as he possibly can, and he plays and he gets to the point in terms of maximizing what he has physically, it's going to be better than anyone in this draft anyway. So he's that good talent-wise. And when he gets to the league and has one-on-ones, you can take 4, 5, 6, 7 plays off in a game and still wind up with 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, and 7 tackles on the day, and everyone's going to love that production. So, I think it's overblown. I understand there's some concern with it, but I would have no trouble. I actually would think it was a mistake. Any team that drafted any other player besides Clown hit number 1.
NFL draft analyst Todd McShay with us here on the Michael K. Show. I'm fascinated, Todd, about the Johnny Manziel story. I mean,
it's unbelievable.
It's the wide swing of what people say. I mean, we've had Bill Polian come on and say, I had the first pick, I would draft him. We had Ron Jaworski say, I wouldn't even use a 3rd-round pick. And it's perfectly illustrated on the cover of Sports Illustrated. They've got all these different opinions. What do you think of Johnny Manziel?
Now, I've had his tape done for a while, and I've just kind of stayed where I am on him. And I think he's a late first-round prospect because there's enough concerns. And I've never given a first-round grade to a player that makes so many critical errors and has so many mechanical issues. And that kind of just speaks to how special he is in everything else he can do. And I've never evaluated a player that can sense and feel pressure the way he does, can elude and extend plays the way he does, and can have the worst throwing motion and body position and arm angle that you've ever seen and wind up delivering a strike the way he does. So he's extremely unique. I would have trouble. I couldn't draft him in the top probably 8 picks in this draft because I think there are too many other good players to select him. You get down in the 10, if 13 St. Louis decided to pull the trigger, I would think it was a great pick. If 16 Dallas Cowboys, despite the fact that it would break Twitter and it would turn into the biggest story in the history of the National Football League, I still would probably pull the trigger. So that's kind of where I think he fits. But the more interesting part, forget what I think. from what I understand and talking to teams in the league, there's 9 of the top 10 teams would not draft him in the pick that they are currently sitting. The one team that is undecided, or at least from what I understand, is the Cleveland Browns, and there are different members within that organization. You know, you got to consider the coaching staff, the personnel department, the owner. There are kind of split opinions on it, the last I heard. So if Cleveland, let's say it goes Clowney 1, and then at number 2, you have Greg Robinson, the offensive tackle, and number 3, Sammy Watkins. You get down to number 4, Cleveland has no use for Khalil Mack. They've got a bunch of those guys. Not as good necessarily, but they've got a bunch of those guys. They also are not going to sit there at number 4 and have this opportunity and take Jake Matthews. As much as I like Jake Matthews or Taylor Lewan, there's a couple of those offensive tackles in most draft classes. So you're either going to try to trade out and get a bunch of picks, which you can't guarantee that that they're going to get an offer, or they're probably going to sit there and take Manziel. But if Robinson, the tackle from Auburn, or Sammy Watkins falls to him at 4, then I think they might go with Robinson or Watkins over taking Manziel. So even as we sit here less than a week away, I'm not sure that they definitively know, and they may even go into the draft, as most teams do, saying, all right, if A, then we'll do this, and if B, then we'll do that. So it's going to be fascinating to see because, again, if he gets past 4, all of a sudden Johnny Manziel can start to fall because he's not going number 5 to Oakland. I can tell you that right now. He's not going to Atlanta, obviously. Tampa Bay is not taking him at 7, despite all the rumors. Number 8, I don't think Minnesota's going to take him, and I think if they were to take a quarterback, it would be Bortles over Manziel. And then number 9, Buffalo just drafted their quarterback last year. Number 10, and on and on and on. I think then you start to see a team like Dallas or maybe St. Louis try to move up into that 9-10 range and go get Manziel. But again, I don't think a team with an original pick outside of Cleveland in the top 10 is planning right now on drafting Manziel.
Now, Todd, though, if you were sitting at 11 and you needed a quarterback and Todd McShay was the GM, you would take Manziel over Bortles, Bridgewater, and Carr?
No. If Bortles is still on the
all
board,
those guys are available.
I'm taking Bortles.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm taking Bortles, and then Manziel, and then Bridgewater, and then on and on. I've got a 4th-round grade on Derek Carr, but I think I'm on an island with that.
All right.
But I would take Bortles over Manziel, but in that scenario, I'm saying that Minnesota took Bortles at 8, and then, if I'm Tennessee and Manziel's the only quarterback on, he's the top quarterback on the board, I'm taking him because I think he's got a better chance of being a really good starter in the league than Jake Locker does.
Todd McShay, our NFL draft analyst, on with us here on the Michael K. Show. Before I let you go, we're in New York. Giants and the Jets. Who do they take?
Well, Giants obviously sitting at 12. They need a tight end, and there's been a lot of speculation about Eric Ebron. I don't think that's where they're going to go. I don't think he's a New York Giant. He's not physical. He doesn't block. He's a speed receiver. I think they wind up, maybe it could be defensive tackle. I know it's not the biggest need, but if Aaron Donald were to fall to them there, I think it would be a great value pick. Obviously, offensive tackle is another position that could be the choice, and Taylor Lewan could fall to him, or you could have Zach Martin, the offensive tackle from Notre Dame. So those are a couple spots I think that they would lean towards. For the Jets, everyone thinks wide receiver, and I agree with the chalk there. It's not going to be Odell Beckham Jr., the 3rd receiver. He's going to be gone. I think it comes down to Brandon Cooks, or maybe I've heard a little bit about Marquise Lee from UFC. If you go off the 2011-2012 tape, he's a really good pick at 18. If you go off of this past year's tape, I'd have a real hard time. So you've got to be convinced that this past year was an aberration and that it was just the fact that he was injured, bad quarterback play, and a bad situation in Southern California. But I don't know. I think it would be a little bit rich for my blood at 18, but there are some teams that like Marquise Lee a little bit more, and I think those are the 2 receivers most likely to be the choice for the New York Jets at 18.
Todd, great stuff. Thank you for the time. We appreciate it.
You got it, Michael. Take care, bud.